Welcome to everyone in our listening audience. Today we're going to talk about an exceptional journey. Actually, some of it's in failure, but
Mm-hmm.
also faith
Mm-hmm.
that led to some amazing success. And we're talking today with Marius van der Riet. So,
Mm-hmm.
welcome, Marius.
Thanks, Don. It's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Yep. Well, Marius is recently retired, but he's still active in several ventures. Marius and I meet monthly with some very talented and seasoned executives in a group called Dream Builders. We're looking to and seeking to find God's dreams for our lives, to use our uniqueness to benefit others. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Marius has decades of business
Mm-hmm.
experience in helping others, but it all began really, I believe, with a military career in South Africa. Is that correct?
Correct, Don. I did. Yeah,
Yep.
totally. Yeah, it's
And
it's interesting. I Go on.
Yeah, I'll just do the last of this. But he also is the chairman of Reed Inc. But that's all part of his amazing journey. So go ahead, talk to us about your career.
Sure, Don. As you say, it started in South Africa, and I have. It's interesting to me because I have a 30-year military career in South Africa, and that being all from a young lieutenant through platoons and companies and battalions, and then brigade commander, and then military area commander, and then eventually ending up in America as the defense attaché for South Africa and representing a very interesting historical time as well because I was the last attaché for a President de Klerk and the first attaché for President Mandela. And I actually changed the flags at the embassy when the country changed leadership and in fact changed the whole direction of the country. So yeah,
Wow,
I was in that military and then ended up in Washington. That's how I got here because I was the defense attaché for South Africa. Hmm.
wow, that you lived one of the most um, interesting times. And there a lot of people in the day because I've followed some of the history in the apartheid years, etc. And I remember I
Yeah.
was in the travel business and things, and I know
Mm.
a lot of people boycotted and didn't want to have even tourism or anything to do with South
Yeah.
Africa in the day. And there was a lot of people and a lot of speculation that there was no way that de Klerk uh, people and part of his administration and the military were going to allow Nelson Mandela to come into power. Was that correct?
Yeah. There was that speculation, and the other part of the joy of my career is that I was, um, as a senior commander, part of the senior command in the Defence Force that discussed this thing. And I remember very well one of the generals saying, "Guys, here's the deal. We, as the military, uh, are completely loyal and we support the government in power. One does not support a political party. And so, therefore, when President Mandela comes into power, we will completely and utterly support him and his government, and there will be no talk of a coup at any time." And in fact, when I was then the defense attaché in the Pentagon, um, obviously Director of Intelligence and those guys called me and said, "Hey, Marius, we think that there's a 30% chance of a coup. Um, what do you think?" And I told them that story. I said, "There's going to be nothing. There's going to be no bloodshed. There's going to be no coup. There's going to be no nothing like that. It has already been decided." And I was actually in that meeting, and it was exactly that.
Wow.
It was a peaceful transition. Yeah, interesting times.
Oh, you were such a part of history, and I'm sure your presence and agreement with your other comrades, etc., that you made it happen. You were part of what made that happen, that transition. And it was time, wasn't it? It was time.
Oh, it was very much time, and I mean, this is not obviously a political discussion at all, but for me, certainly, it was time. The policies had run their course, and it was time to change, and the change came.
And you found,
But of course,
so then you found yourself in Washington, right?
yeah. So then I was appointed as the defense attaché, basically that means that you represent the South African military in all its forms in in America. And so I worked with the Pentagon. I worked with the Secretary of Defense, parts of his organization,
Mhm.
and I spent 4 years doing that and
Wow.
representing that. And in fact, one of the joys to me was that I was eventually um, given the Legion of Merit Medal by the Americans for my work between South Africa and America. You know, sort of like past history, and it's like years back. It's like a different life. Strange stuff.
Oh, and you then didn't you leave the military after what, 24 years or so, somewhere in that time?
I left very close to 30 years, yes. Um, a 30-year career in the military, and I then left because I had been offered a job here in the United States. And as things were changing, I realized that my career wouldn't be the same there, and for my children and all the things that were happening. And so we decided to immigrate to America, and we did that. And so I started from scratch here in 1994.
Wow. What was your first business? What did you do for work, and how did that happen?
Well, I was sponsored by a group called Rooney Group International, a guy called Jim Rooney, and he was a lobbyist. Fascinating job in Washington, D.C., you can imagine. And I was appointed as the director of international business development because all the sanctions were changing against South Africa, and so I helped him open some significant doors into South
Hmm.
Africa and also in the Pacific Rim. And so that's how I started. But I realized after literally a year that I was too old to create a pension. I had lost my pension from South Africa, and so I had to recreate a pension. And so I decided to head out and try and start business by myself, which I did.
What what
Crazy,
was what was
crazy.
the first business you started?
I started importing coffee and cocoa out of Sierra Leone. And I was up to about 7 containers, and there was a coup, and it destroyed the business, and so I started again. And so, in fact, Don, I had four failures like that over a time of 9 years of starting something,
Ouch.
getting financing for it,
Mm.
um, trying it, and then through extension, other circumstances, extenuating circumstances, um, failed and simply started again, and so and eventually succeeded in creating a company, an international security company.
How did your faith play a part in your journey? You've been a man of faith from early
Mm-hmm.
on. So how did that play during failure? Did you feel sometimes like Job, or what? Here failure, try, succeed, and it didn't work
Yeah,
four or
yeah,
five times.
Eh, yeah. Interesting. I always, as you know, we are both men of faith, and I had given my life specifically to the Lord already at on War College back in the day in South Africa, and sort of laid my career and my life out. And then when we got to the States, it was interesting. I went to a Thanksgiving dinner um, at the very end of my defense attaché tenure in November. And at
Hmm.
that dinner, there was a little pantomime about how the Pilgrims and the Indians and how they helped each other and all this sort of stuff. And in front of every plate setting, there were five little kernels of corn. And the story was of how those bits of corn, how they planted it and how they made a new life. And so I took my little five kernels of corn home, and I sat my family down, and we literally said to each other, okay, Lord, we're starting in this brand new country as new pilgrims and of pilgrims of faith. And so if you can give us more than these five kernels of corn, we will have no room to complain. And we know you're looking after us. And if you give us less, then we can complain. And the whole family knew that. And so, in fact, the family moved forward into America as new pilgrims with our little five kernels of corn. And we felt that this was the Lord's plan. And so we went for it.
How old were your kiddos in that day? I think what
They
you have
were,
three kids?
they, yes, three kids. And they were at that time um, 15, 17, 19, or maybe 18, 16, 14. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
yeah. And we sat down as a family together, and we said, okay. And I literally committed my family to the Lord, and said, let's go for it. And so, therefore, it was interesting that as I tried to create business and failed those first four times, I was never sued for the people that helped finance me. My family never felt I was a loser. They all knew that was the plan, and they all knew that this was God's plan and His timing, and I would just go for it. And so it really was that. And then, just while we're talking faith, eventually, uh, after 9.5 years, I failed finally, and my um, my brother was in Kenya, and he just let me know that they had burnt the door down of my warehouse and stolen all our goods, and he had taken our last money to the port of Mombasa to try and get the containers cleared, and he got false papers, and that money was also stolen. So we were basically dead in the water, and we had to go home to South Africa.
Oh,
And I was
gee.
sitting on my steps. I really, yeah, and sitting on my steps, thinking, Lord, what do I do now? And my neighbor came out, and he said, hey, Marius, what's happening? And I told him, and he said, no, you guys have got to stay. And I said, Jim, we can't stay. And he went inside his house. He said, man, I need a smoke. And he went into the house and came back puffing a cigarette and said, Marius, you're staying. I said, I don't, Jim, we can't. He said, no, America needs families like yours. And he gave me $100,000 as a gift.
He gave you what?
And $100,000 as a gift. He just gave it to me. He said, Marius, you need to stay. And it was like the Lord tapping me on my shoulder and saying, you see, you of little faith, I just needed you to know it's not you, it's me. I have this. I've got the plan. You are supposed to be in America.
Wow.
And we continued. And shortly after that, I created a company called Riet International, which turned into an international security company in 4 different countries and different continents. Crazy
Well,
stuff
you had a background in in
in military. Yeah.
military and logistics and things. So when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, we got business people that need to go to now in the day," it was probably Iraq and then I'm guessing Afghanistan and parts of the Middle East and things.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah, totally.
security was paramount. And how do you handle the logistics of all that? And I think I remember hearing you say, "Hey, I know some guys." So
Yeah,
did you have a
exactly.
formal
Yeah, yeah.
company in the beginning, or you had a business plan and you put it in front of investors and you did all these things and then it just went from boom 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 because it was all super organized and all planned out,
You,
right?
you, you, you wish, right? Yeah, you wish. So, in fact, America was just moving into Iraq, and they were going to come out of Turkey into Iraq, and I was invited to because they needed some logisticians, and I knew something about logistics. And I remember standing up in the front at this one office and looking at the map, and they were saying, yes, the troops are going to come out of Turkey, and we've got to follow them in. And so I said, well, if you've got to do that, see over there, you must have a logistics base, and then over there, you've got to do that, and then you've got to go and get some Peshmerga, and then you've got to have a freight forwarders there. I said, Mice, how do you know all that? And I thought to myself, because I've failed at doing this 4 times over 9 years, but I've also got the military background of knowing how to run an operation like this. And the bottom line is, I then got this little contract because of that. And again, it was like the Lord saying to me, you see, Marius, I just needed to get you through all these 9 years of failure to understand and be in front of this map at this time for you to be able to explain all this and to actually go. And so I went to Iraq on that little contract, and I didn't come home for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I created a company out there, and we started with 6 people, and then 800 people, and then eventually it was close to 4,000 people in Iraq and Afghanistan and in Mogadishu and in all over the place.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing journey. And the fact that somebody, I think, do you think that God was sending you fish and when you needed it and the fish had a coin in its mouth? Right?
I, I do know this, Don, that I couldn't have done it on my own. And of course, I had a daughter who supported me in this whole thing throughout, and I had a team, and I had and the team, some from South Africa, some from America, from all over the place eventually. Um, but I do know that I stepped forward in faith, knowing that the Lord had this. I mean, I got Don. I was so close 3 or 4 times in Iraq, from being blown out of a hostel or attacked on the road or things, and somehow stayed safe. And somehow I just knew the Lord's plan was this, and it's His timing. And I rested in that. I honestly did. And then, in fact, another little story. The day that there was a possibility that I could win this little 6-man contract of logistics, before I actually stood in front of that map that day, I was showering in the morning, and I leant my head against the shower wall, and I said, Lord, I have failed 4 times. I've messed things up every time. If this is the one, it's yours, not mine. I'll be a good steward of it, but this is yours. And I left to that company for that. And I won the little contract, and literally, I mean, it almost sounds like prosperity, prosperity
Gospel, yeah.
theology, and it isn't. But the fact it turned into, over a number of years, turned into this company all over the world, with millions of dollars of contracts, and people, Indonesian, Fijian, Filipino, Ugandan, Australian, British, American, South African people. I got them from all over the world there, and we created this company, and it's just amazing stuff. And it was
Uh,
his, it still is.
wow. Well, you've worked with a lot of people in not only your military days, and I believe your father was, amazing in the military as well. You've seen a lot of excellent
Yeah.
leaders over many years.
Mm,
What are some of the
mm.
qualities or attributes you've most admired and tried to emulate as you watch these leaders?
Yeah, Don, I think the very first thing, is planning and being very focused and intentional. I saw that, and I've read that, and I've practiced that, and I saw that in the military back home, and I've seen it in business here. And the other thing that I really have tried to emulate and have learned a lot about is that, um, real leadership is not about what you're doing or what you get out of it, but it is how to create a team that does the best they can, and how your team, um, can really, thrive. Because if they thrive, and you can build a team of thriving people who have synergy, in other words, the group is better than the best individual, that to me is leadership. And that's what I've learned that, I've practiced that. I've had thousands of people working with me, and it works every time.
So it sounds like you're really saying is that the role of the leader, and you certainly led from the top in a lot of
Yeah,
areas and places that you were,
yeah.
but your thinking is it's not about making followers, it's about creating other leaders. It's about replication. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it is creating the space, the environment, the opportunity of those that you are leading, for them to do their best and thrive, and for them to reach their goals through what they're doing with you and for you. It's amazing. I remember one of the things, for instance, in Iraq, one of my country managers was saying, Marius, we got to get more loyalty from these guys, because they some of them are seeking contracts just because they can get a little bit more here, a little bit more there. And I said, no, I must earn their loyalty through what I give them here, because their loyalty, in fact, is to their families. Their need is to get enough money here under these very dangerous circumstances to support their families back home, for their families, their standard of living there, their education there. So their loyalty must be to their family, and I must complement that.
Wow.
And it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't you have a little tiny family that you kind of work with here today. So
Hmm.
just describe your current situation with your family. What you got a few grandkids out there or what's it like?
Yeah, you know that it's fabulous. I have three children and I have 14 grandkiddos, and of those grandkiddos, four are adopted from Ethiopia. A sibling, four children, two boys, two girls, and they it took about a 3.5 year process to get them here, and it was going to be one little girl, and then it was going to be two little girls because we found out she had a sister, and my son adopted these four, and then we found that they had two brothers, so we found homes for the two brothers, and then the government said to us, "No, if you're taking these children, we're not splitting the family. So either you take all four or you take nothing." And so my son decided to take all four, and so he doubled his family size from four children to eight children, and our grandkiddos from 10 to 14, and they are thriving. It's been quite a journey. Of course, adoption always there's ups and downs, but it's been quite a journey, and we all live within 15 minutes of each other here in Orlando, and it's been a total blessing.
Thanksgiving's got to be fun at your house.
Always is. Oh, I tell you what, it's wonderful, and it's very very much. It's one of the American family traditions that we love. And of course, now we're all citizens. We all love this country, and all the grandkiddos and the four Ethiopians, they're all Americans, and yeah, it's wonderful. It's
So
a total blessing. Where you know.
so did you ever at Thanksgiving ever pull out those kernels of corn again?
Every year, every single year, and those kernels of corn, they're now 32 years old, and they never rotted, and I have them in a little leather pouch, and the children all know, and they all wait in expectation, and we pour the little kernels of corn onto the table, and we tell the story, and we tell the
Wow,
story about pilgrims to this wonderful land and the gift of America. It really is. It's a gift.
that's so
Yeah.
cool. Excellent. So what does your son do? What's he up to?
He's a pastor. Yeah, he's a pastor of a church.
Hmm.
He studied theology, and then, like we did with the company, we started from scratch. So did he, and he built a church over the years. It's now 22 years old, and it's a church here in Winter Garden, Florida, called Mosaic, and it's turned into a large church now. He'd always sort of thought he'd be a small church pastor, but it didn't turn out that way. I think the Lord had other plans. And so they have a lovely, thriving, big church. They have 52 partners all over the world. They support a lot of stuff. They support foster care and adoption. I mean, just in their church alone, I think they're now at about 300 adopted children. And it's a remarkable story for them.
Yeah.
It's been really, really great.
Well, how did this whole Axum coffee come about?
Yeah, so the four children were adopted from a little village called Axum, which is Axum. And my son at their church, they serve coffee in the mornings at services and donuts and odds and ends like that. And so he thought, but what if we created a coffee shop for um, to sell coffee, but that all profits would be given away for impact. And so they started a little coffee shop called Oxum because it was from that village, and it has now turned into. I believe they have three Oxum coffees, and they have a roastery now, and it's a successful coffee business, and it is, and they give money away
Yeah.
to do
It,
impact.
it's
Yeah.
actually, isn't it actually a for-profit business and they just go ahead and pour the profits back
It,
into Ethiopia?
yes, it's a for-profit business, and the profit is used to help children in hard places.
All right. Well, if you're ever in Winter Garden, Florida, you have to go to
Mm.
Plant Street and Axum Coffee and highly
Yep.
recommend Dancing Goats. Okay? That's
There
a
you go. You know them, hey Don. Oh, I love it.
been
Yeah, it's
there
good
a few
coffee. It's
times.
very good coffee.
It's a great
Yeah.
place, etc. So today, I know you're probably semi-retired, but you still keep your hand in some things. I believe you were involved with there was something called Veterans Lodge, and that was a concept that you guys were noodling. Is that still in concept stage, or is things moving, or what happened with that?
So the joy of that, there's a lady called Julie, and Julie lost a family member, veteran, to suicide. And we all became very aware of the amount of suicides that are happening within the veteran community because of PTS and things like that. And so she came up with the thought of why don't we build a veteran, what we call a veterans lodge, a place that veterans can go and their families to be treated, to be helped, and then get through that, and then also find jobs and motivation into how to find jobs and things like that. So long story short, we went up to Springfield, Missouri, met with a guy there, ex-Marine, who happened to be a billionaire, and we discussed the whole concept with him. And again, long story short, it was decided to go ahead. He financed the whole thing, and up in Defuniak Springs now, the sewerage and the water pipes and everything else have already been laid. We're breaking ground, and Veterans Lodge is actually happening. And what it's going to
Wow.
be, it's going to be this facility where veterans can come. There's going to be houses for their families around the facility, because the families must also go through, because they also have a sense
Mhm.
of PTS, post-traumatic syndrome, and we're actually building it. It's going ahead, and it's a obviously non-profit, but it is not financed by the veterans organization at all. It's a normal business concept, and we believe it's going to work very well. And if it does work well, we're going to do it multi-state, and create this space for veterans.
That is
And I'm on the
fantastic.
board. I'm on the board of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fantastic. And I believe, and it's been years in the making, but I do believe it was one
Oh,
of
it
those
has.
things that where I heard you say one day, let us hear God's still small voice to whisper and say, let there be what?
Let there
And
be.
that let there be a
Let there
veterans
be a
lodge.
veterans lodge. Exactly. You remember that head on. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do.
And it's been, I mean, it's literally, it's been 4 years,
Yeah.
but these things take time. And it's actually happening. Yeah. Yeah. It's phenomenal. It's one of the dreams.
Yeah, that is so great. So what are a couple of things that, I know you mentor through your church and other people, and people come to you for advice all the time. I think your calendar gets pretty
Mm.
full with phone calls and people. But what are some key
Well,
skills or
I enjoy mentoring.
yeah, so what are some key skills, attributes, or talents you would advise anybody at whatever stage in their career to develop or continue to develop, that to equip them because
Mm.
today's marketplace is changing, right?
Yeah, it really is. I do. I guess I'm an old school type guy that I believe that if you are going somewhere, you need to know where you're going. So I need to know you should have a goal, you should have a mission, should have something, and it starts as we do. And I'm old school. I still believe you must have a vision of what you're trying to do. And then I um, I always believed in management by objectives, and I've changed that now in the sense of it doesn't have to be all exactly objective planned and things, but you must be intentional. You've got to keep moving forward with intention towards that
Mhm.
specific vision or mission, and your group must all be aware of exactly what that is, so that they all have the. I call it the why, and of course in the management books as well. You must know what your why is. You
Mhm.
must know why we're building a veterans lodge. You must know why we have got a security company. You must. So those things very much, and intentionality is huge. And then I really believe in perseverance, because nothing happens easily, and I believe in time. Nothing happens in a year or two. It's all 5 to 10 years. I mean, really, guys, it's never like that, and you know that, Don. I mean, it takes years to create a company, a successful thing. It takes years to excuse me, to create your own successful self. I mean, it's a process.
That that is so true. And in consulting, we know there's a lot of lot of wild claims. You've worked with a lot of consultants. You've been a consultant in
Mm,
military operations and
mm,
logistics and all kinds of things.
yeah.
But
Mm,
we don't promise that in 30 days, hey, you're going to get 10 clients in
oh,
30 days or do it. Or if you're working in
no.
a single business, it might take, and it probably will take 6 months to the year to see the fruit of what that strategic plan coupled with the disciplines of execution. When we created the Kingdom Growth Engine software to help consultants do this, we're a little bit contrarian and we're a little bit ticked off at the consulting industry. And so we want to be a disruptor. So when we created our software
Yeah,
to help consultants, we put it on the market, the app, for $9.95. No big government
exactly.
contracts, no Deloitte.
Make it usable.
Yep,
Make it
and give it
accessible.
to people to use
Absolutely.
it so that they can get jobs and do stuff. And if people want to go to
Mm,
kingdomgrowthengine.com and see it, that's fine. But that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to say that intentionality is so important.
huge.
I don't know what you've been reading, but I read a book just recently, coming back from Chicago 2 weeks ago, just before the hurricane, and it was called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's written by
Mm,
a guy named Will Guidara. In fact, I was at Hilgart's office the other day, and I said, "Have you heard of this?" And he reached over and pulled it off his shelf. He said, "Yeah, it's been sitting here for 2 months. I haven't read it." I said, "Well, read it because
uh-huh. Right.
it's the remarkable power of giving people more than they expect." And he took
Oh, man.
11 Madison Park, a middling restaurant in New York City, over 7, 8, 9 years or whatever, he and his partner took it to the number one restaurant in the world against Paris,
Wow.
Michelin chefs. And the way he tells the story of just, he didn't even know what unreasonable hospitality was, but he challenged his team because, the chefs always like to think that they're the prima donnas. People come because of the food.
Mm,
The servers on the
mm,
front end and the GM and everybody say, no, it's because we serve our clients well. They come back and we know their names and we do stuff. And those two
right. Yeah.
clash. But he found ways to blend and do things differently. So I wrote a blog called Unreasonable Consulting: The Remarkable
Oh,
Power of
yeah.
giving someone more than they expect and delivering to our clients. And
Mm,
and today that's what we want to do. We want to, just as Axum Coffee Shop, they give people way more than they expect. When you go to Mosaic, even to a service, you get way
oh, yeah.
more than you
Yeah, yeah.
expect. I mean, not only great teaching, great things, but the programs they have, etc. So you guys have been on that track for a long time. I just like Will's book. Is there anything you've read or just recently or seminar that kind of inspired you?
Well, that's interesting because I'm very interested in leadership. I'm very interested in good management. And so I still read books like it. I've just read very recently Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And it's typically a SEAL team guy and how he puts that into practice. I've just read Making Your Bed, the admiral
I
who you've seen that, and
love
he
it.
made a speech of it and turned it into a book. I mean, phenomenal stuff. Um, and then 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I mean, I just read that just recently. But also, is what's been interesting to me is that um, I have one of my grandchildren has dyslexia, and so I've also been reading books on dyslexia and what that's all about. I love the inquisitive of it all, the understanding of new things, um, and uh, and I'm also actually reading some stuff about how to make sure that your full body, brain, everything else. Because hey, being 75, that interests me now. Of how do you make sure that your brain is good and that you can exercise your brain and what you can eat and how you can do it and socialization. So I love this stuff. So
Yeah.
yes, lots of different books.
Being a lifelong learner is so important, and not only keep
Mm,
fresh but keep current and all of that. So yeah, I love to read,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it's a wonderful thing when although I know you told me you were reading the the relentless or elimination of hurry.
Just fin-
Yeah, elimination of
oh,
hurry. But you
yes,
were you
good
were
book.
doing an audio version of it and setting it on fast speed.
And
Doesn't that kind of defeat the
and
purpose?
immediately put it on 1.3. And
It's
in fact,
terrible.
I got that from a guy at Dream Builders, the same organization we both belong to, and
Yeah.
and I loved the book, and I suddenly realized I'm listening to this, I'm hurrying through the book, and
Well,
it defeats the purpose. So I slowed it down to normal timing.
okay. Well, I'm glad you did because elimination of hurry. I bought it 2 months ago, probably when you did, and it's sitting on my shelf. I haven't opened it, so I guess I'm eliminating the hurry of it, but I do want to read it. So that's so important.
So
Well,
hey,
Marius,
John,
Marius
a
is
little tip: get it into an audio book and listen to it in the car. It's great fun.
Yeah, that
Anyway,
sounds
yeah.
great. Well, listen, this has been such a delight to talk to you today. I know, there's lots of people that do want to reach out. If somebody does want to reach out to you, is the best way? Are you on LinkedIn or do you like email? Or if somebody wants to just have questions or
I'm
whatever?
I'm on I'm on LinkedIn, but my email is this: John John Marius Marius. So John Marius, one word, dot VDR for Vanderit at gmail.com, and I really will respond to emails. I mean, my phone number. I don't mind giving my phone number out. I enjoy mentoring. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy hearing advice and giving some advice. So my phone number is 703-801-9923. Text
Oh,
me. Say
I,
hello.
Marius, that is so generous and gracious of you. You're a part of history in the first half of your life as you see it. I think you were, I don't know, if I was making a movie about you, I'd probably say my Forrest Gump life, because you were there.
I
You
hear
were there
you.
in the middle of it. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
and the beautiful thing about it is, and having one of your grandsons on the lake and teaching him how to sail and getting to know your family, etc.
mm,
It's so fun
you
to
were there.
see them grow up and to see the
Yeah,
people that they
yeah.
become. So, best to
Mm.
you and all your family.
No,
Many
thanks.
blessings on that. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Bring out the corn.
I certainly will, John. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity of chatting to you. I always enjoy that, and and I love your knowledge on leadership and on management and all the things and all the books that you've given me. So thank you, my friend.
All right.
I enjoy our friendship.
Well, we'll continue the conversation. So, have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, my friend. Okay, you too.